Carl Jung. 13. Signs that your aura is so powerful it can awaken reactions in others. Some people, upon entering a room without saying a single word, cause a noticeable change in seconds. The air seems to intensify, gazes turn to them almost involuntarily, and for some, this can be inexplicably unsettling. What is really happening is that these people carry a powerful aura, which acts as an invisible mirror of what they have already awakened within themselves. According to Carl Gustav Jung, the psyche contains not only conscious content, but also deep layers that manifest through energy. In this sense, the aura is a symbolic representation of someone's psychic energy. When this energy is strong, consistent, and aligned with a person's deepest being, it begins to act silently, communicating even before a gesture. And this communication, though subtle, is potent. The presence of someone with a dense and structured aura can generate reactions that others do not rationally understand. Some feel drawn, others pull away, but almost everyone feels something. This perception is not mystical. It is symbolic, unconscious, and profoundly human. Your energy touches layers that verbal language cannot reach, revealing intentions, authenticity, and conflicts, whether resolved or ongoing. And when this revelation occurs without permission, those who have not yet confronted themselves may feel threatened. That is why you might often notice strange reactions to your presence, people frowning, changing the subject, or trying to dim your light. This is not about you, but about what your aura awakens in them. Without realizing it, you become a mirror of what others hide. This silent force can be unsettling because it is uncontrollable. It does not ask for permission. It simply exists. And to be purely and essentially authentic in a world of masks is a provocation. Your energy speaks before your mouth does, whispering truths that many are not yet ready to hear. However silent your light may be, it can be a spark. The issue is not the brightness itself, but what it reveals. Jung said that we all have a shadow, the repressed, denied, or rejected part of our psyche. When a powerful, luminous, and authentic aura radiates, it inevitably illuminates the shadow of those around it, and that, for many, is unbearable. The presence of someone authentic, centered, and at peace with their own complexities can be uncomfortable, not because that person is aggressive, but because their energy makes visible what others ignore in themselves. Your confidence highlights the other's insecurity. Your calm exposes another's anxiety. Your clarity activates the unresolved confusion in those who live in denial. This dynamic is unconscious. No one chooses to feel threatened by you. But when someone is faced with an unwanted reflection, especially an internal, emotional, and deep reflection, the reaction is usually defensive. Irony, distancing, judgments, or even subtle attacks are natural mechanisms of the ego to preserve its fragile structure when confronted with the truth, without the need for direct confrontation. Your aura does not just illuminate, it reveals. And what is revealed is not always beautiful, at least for those who still live with masks. For these people, you are not just a presence, but a reminder, a sign that it is possible to live with greater integrity, but that this requires effort and courage. The most interesting part is that most of those who feel bothered by you do not know exactly why. They just say they don't like you, or that there's something about you that doesn't fit. This is the effect of shadow projection, an aversion that is born from within, but is directed outward. You did nothing, but your presence did too much. According to Jung, the collective unconscious is a deep layer of the mind shared by all of humanity, transcending cultures, times, and histories where archetypes, primordial symbols, live. Someone with a powerful aura not only activates their individual being, but also unconsciously mobilizes universal symbols that reside in the psyche of those around them. Have you ever noticed how some people inspire respect, mystery, or even a certain fear without any effort? This happens because their presence resonates with a deep archetype. Perhaps, without knowing it, you represent the sage, the healer, the rebel, the warrior, or the magician. These archetypal images are not just metaphors. They are psychological structures that evoke automatic emotions and reactions, even when recognized unconsciously. When your aura brings one of these universal symbols to the surface, you become larger than yourself. You are not just entering a room. You are activating something ancestral in those who observe you. This can be unsettling because there is no clear logic or rationality in this process. It is as if you are reminding others of something they have forgotten or avoid remembering. And the more unconscious this memory is, the more intense the reaction. This is why you sometimes feel out of place or encounter excessive admiration or suspicion for no apparent reason. People are not reacting to you, but to what you symbolize. You become a collective mirror, an ancient code that resonates not only with your memories, but with those of humanity itself. This is both the burden and the power of carrying an aura connected to the collective unconscious. Your presence becomes a living symbol, and symbols do not always please everyone. They inspire, challenge, provoke, and often threaten. Your mere presence can represent a rupture, the truth, freedom, or change. And not everyone is ready to face that head-on. Authenticity is a rare force, and when it is genuine, it does not need to be explained. It manifests as an invisible field that radiates naturally from a person who has stopped fighting against their own essence. The aura of someone who lives authentically is clear, solid, and hard to ignore. And that is precisely why it can be bothersome. In our society, it is common to hide emotions, to hide uncertainties, to hide who you are in order to fit in. When someone chooses to live without masks, their aura immediately clashes with collective norms. The presence of an authentic being silently questions everything that is maintained with ease and fear in others. The energy of authenticity reveals a being who has delved into their own shadow, who has acknowledged their own wounds, and despite this, has decided to move forward. This has a profound impact, not because of what they say, but because of how they are. Their energies radiate consistency, presence, and truth. And this is unsettling for many. These people do not fit the script. This is confusing. They do not seek constant approval, do not compete for attention, do not mold themselves to please. They simply are. And in this simply being, the fragile structures around them begin to tremble. The instinct for comparison is activated, and with it, the discomfort. Why does this person seem so whole while I still wear masks? That is why the aura of the authentic creates a kind of natural division. It attracts those who are seeking themselves, but repels those who are still hiding. And this repulsion is not logical. It is a defensive movement, as if one's authenticity exposes the internal truths that others are trying to cover up. Being authentic is a revolutionary act. Your aura is a living testimony that it is possible to live in truth. But be prepared, because this truth, even if silent, will be seen as a threat by many, not because you attack, but because you reveal. And what you reveal unintentionally invites change, and change, for many, is a fear greater than living in illusion. There is something in human energy that precedes any word, any gesture. Before someone opens their mouth, their energy has already spoken, their presence has already made contact. It is as if the body comes after the energy, and when this energy is intense, integrated, and true, it has the power to shape the environment. This power does not need to shout, as it operates in the invisible. Carl Jung spoke of the self, the totality of being, as the integration of the conscious and the unconscious. When a person approaches this state of totality, their presence becomes a living manifestation of this wholeness. They are no longer fragmented or dependent on the external to define themselves. And it is precisely this wholeness that disturbs the environment, that breaks the pattern. You enter a room, and although you do not understand why, you feel gazes piercing you. Those whose attention was scattered become alert. Some look away, others become curious, others close themselves off. And none of these reactions are directly about you. It is about what your silent presence symbolizes in the unconscious of each person. A powerful presence is the result of an aura aligned with inner truth, not with arrogance or domination, but with depth. It is the strength of someone who has overcome challenges, who has confronted themselves, and who no longer needs to prove anything. The security it radiates does not come from the ego, but from deep self-knowledge. This security does not compete, does not demand, but it commands respect. And that is where the discomfort begins. In a world where many try to assert themselves with appearances, excesses, and constant talk, someone who is a presence in their essence becomes a disturbing mirror. Your simple entrance exposes the superficiality of others. Your calm highlights the hurry of others. Your silence reveals the widespread confusion. And this, for many, is almost unbearable. That is why, when you arrive, you may notice subtle changes, conversations that stop, expressions that alter, atmospheres that inexplicably cool down or heat up. Your aura impacts the space because it vibrates with consistency. And consistency is rare these days. Rarity is bothersome, especially if it does not bend, explain itself, or deform to fit in. But remember, this is not a burden. It is a sign, an indicator that you are living your own truth. And when that happens, you not only transform the environment, but you also activate something in others, something that can either grow or become defensive. And neither of these paths depends on you. Your task is not to please, but to remain whole. Carl Gustav Jung stated clearly, "What we do not confront in ourselves, we will find as fate." And often, this fate manifests in the form of another person who evokes intense emotions, even without an apparent reason. This phenomenon has a name: projection. And if you have a powerful aura, be prepared. You will often be the stage for other people's internal conflicts. Projection is a mechanism of the psyche in which repressed parts, fears, problems, desires, and weaknesses are unconsciously transferred onto another person. When someone does not recognize a part of themselves, that part needs to manifest in some way. And usually, it manifests in the form of judgment. Harsh criticism, instant rejections, or exaggerated admiration are forms of projection. If you, in your way of being in the world, represent something that the other person has repressed in themselves, that person may begin to see in you what they refuse to see in themselves. If you are free, they might accuse you of being irresponsible. If you are decisive, of being arrogant. If you are sensitive, of being fragile. But in reality, these accusations are not about you. They reveal the challenges of the accusé. A powerful aura serves this function. It works as an involuntary mirror. You do not choose to project, but you reflect. And the more light your aura radiates, the more it exposes the shadows around you. This can lead to distancing, tensions, or, in more extreme cases, conflicts that seem irrational. But they are logical. They are unconscious reactions to something activated in the other, something they are not ready to confront. You become then a symbol. And symbols can be dangerous for those who still live on the surface. Your presence awakens repressed inner voices, buried desires, silenced irritations, denied fears. Everything starts to move, and the ego, in a panic, tries to protect the internal structure by blaming you as the source of the discomfort. However, you are just a reflection. Understanding this is liberating. You stop trying to please, justify yourself, or fix the reactions of others. You realize this is not about me, and yet you keep your light on, because your task is not to protect others from what they do not yet want to see, but to uphold your truth, even if it is bothersome. The aura is not just an energy that circulates around the body. It is a symbolic field, an invisible space where the essence manifests beyond words, where archetypes, emotions, and internal states silently communicate with those who are near. Whoever possesses a powerful aura, in fact, carries a living symbolic language that speaks directly to the unconscious of others, even if no one rationally understands what is being said. Carl Gustav Jung always emphasized the mediating role of symbols between the conscious and the unconscious. They are expressions of that which has not yet been rationalized, but which has a real existence within us. And an active and aligned aura becomes a kind of symbol in motion. It transmits images, emotions, archetypes, states of mind without a single word. That is why, when you enter a room, your aura begins to converse with the collective unconscious present there. If you have inner strength, it is perceived. If you have transformative experiences, it is felt. If you carry truth, there are those who recognize it and those who feel bothered by it. The most impactful aspect of this symbolic communication is that it is instinctive. No one can stop it. That is why, even in silence, you make an impact. A powerful aura does not just radiate good vibes. It transmits experiences, carries codes, and holds life experiences that you have often integrated and that others cannot yet name. This creates an immediate identification or repulsion. The other feels that you know something, even without knowing what it is. This is the occurrence of symbolic communication, direct, raw, profound, and it has nothing to do with mysticism, but with the way the unconscious perceives the world. Even before reasoning, before speech, we all read subtle fields, living symbols, presences. That is why a powerful aura is like an open book. A book that many do not want to read, but that they cannot ignore. A mirror of meanings that transcends logic and directly touches what has been forgotten, denied, or not yet awakened. That is why the reactions to your presence are often inexplicable. They do not come from the conscious mind. They come from what you symbolize in the other's psyche. And this symbol can be embraced or violently rejected, depending on the person's stage of life, their emotional maturity, and their openness to self-knowledge. In archetypal psychology, Jung reminds us that some individuals not only live their own journey, but also activate the journey of others. They are like catalysts of the unconscious. And if you possess a powerful aura connected to your most fundamental truth, you may, unintentionally, be representing the archetype of the awakener, someone who triggers internal movement, conflict, and transformation in the people around them. This archetype is not necessarily a teacher, a healer, or a guru. Often, they simply act in silence, being who they are. But their energy is a call, awakening what is dormant in others. Sometimes it is an abandoned dream, sometimes an unresolved experience. But almost always their mere presence activates an unconscious process of change. And the problem is that not everyone wants to awaken. Many build their entire lives on denial, creating safe but false realities, so they do not have to face what is inside them. When someone with an intense aura enters the scene, this fortress begins to tremble, not with offensive words, but with a vibration. You represent the possibility of a wholer life. And this possibility, however luminous it may be, can be frightening for those who depend on illusion. The presence of the awakener archetype can lead to intense emotional resistance. People may pull away without knowing why, suddenly change their behavior, or begin to have internal crises after contact with you. This is not about blame, it is about process. Your energy touched something that needed to come to the surface, and the other's ego tries to resist defensively. Jung said that the process of individuation, of becoming who you really are, often begins with a collapse. an internal, silent collapse, apparently without reason. The awakening is not always enlightened. It begins with discomfort. And you, with your aura, can be the starting point of this necessary collapse for some. That is why you should not be surprised if you notice that some people, after meeting you, suddenly disappear or become cold. They see you as a threat without truly allowing themselves to know you. Sometimes you just touched a wound they have avoided their whole lives, and the only reaction they can manage is withdrawal or hostility. But this is the destiny of one who carries the awakener archetype. You did not come to please, you came to remind. And those who do not yet want to remember, try to silence the memory, even if that memory is just standing still, in silence, in a room. Carrying an intense aura has a silent price, a price that few speak of, but that many feel. Loneliness, not a physical loneliness, but a deeper existential loneliness. It is born from being different in a world that celebrates the common. Having a powerful aura often means being misunderstood, and there is almost always a distance before an approach. People with such intense energy often walk as if they do not belong anywhere. This is not arrogance, but the fact that their presence brings something rare, and what is rare is observed with caution or rejected before being accepted. The powerful aura carries a silence that many cannot bear. It speaks of depth, of real confrontation. And for those who still live on the surface of themselves, this is too uncomfortable to be embraced immediately. Carl Gustav Jung said that the closer a person gets to their authentic self, the more they distance themselves from the masses. Individuation is a lonely path because it requires leaving behind layers that others still value. The desire for acceptance, the search for external approval, the need to be understood. When you transcend these patterns, your energy changes, and with it, people's reaction to you. You begin to realize that genuine encounters become rarer, but deeper. Meanwhile, superficial relationships seem fragile, uncomfortable, or even hostile. You are no longer easily deciphered or manipulated, and that is scary, because most people are used to relating to edited versions, not whole essences. However, this loneliness is not a punishment. It is a preparation. Life filters the connections around you so that only what is true remains. Your aura repels what is false, but it also attracts what is compatible. However, as this compatibility is rare, it is not found around every corner. With time, you learn to inhabit this loneliness without suffering. It ceases to be a lack and becomes a space to hear yourself better, to perceive your own frequency without the interference of external noise. And if someone enters this space and remains, you will know that this presence is genuine, because your aura does not allow masks. The loneliness of the uncommon is, in fact, the silence of truth waiting for the right connection. It is a connection that arises when you decide not to dim your light, to fit into places that are already too small for who you have become. Staying true to yourself is perhaps the greatest challenge for someone who possesses a powerful aura, because The issue is not just discovering your light, but sustaining it, especially when it bothers, confuses, or leads to rejection. The pressure to soften your energy, diminish your presence, or adapt to the discomfort of others can be constant. And it is here that true wholeness is tested. Wholeness is not rigidity, it is consistency. It is the ability to remain the same, whether there is an audience or not. To continue to vibrate in your truth, even if the compliments fade, the doors close, and judgments are attracted. Jung defined individuation as the path to finding the self, but he never said that this path would be comfortable. On the contrary, it is demanding, as it requires abandoning all the masks that once protected but now suffocate. To be whole is to have the courage not to back down when your light causes discomfort. It is knowing that your aura was made to reveal the truth, not to conform to the superficial. And as noble as this may sound, it can be lonely, challenging, and even painful. But it is also profoundly liberating, because when you live in wholeness, you stop trading your essence for acceptance. This internal strength is reflected in your energy, creating a field that attracts those who seek truth and repels those who are still attached to illusion. You do not need to convince anyone. Your presence is already a statement. It says, it is possible to be whole. It is possible to be true, even if it costs the comfort of being like everyone else. And it is at this point that the discomfort your aura creates transforms into a tool. You understand that you are not here to please, but to awaken. And instead of apologizing for the intensity of your light, your role is to learn to direct it with awareness, with presence, with purpose. In the end, when you understand that your wholeness is more important than superficial acceptance, something definitively changes. You become a beacon, firm, constant, silent. And although some may look away, those who are lost in the darkness will always find their way by your light. If this content resonated with your essence, perhaps it is time to go deeper. The other videos on this channel, which are now appearing on the screen, will continue this inner journey with you. Watch and allow your light to continue to awaken.